from Camp Living Waters up in Danforth, Maine. He's going to tell us about the camp and have a little testimony and take the service. Dave, welcome.
Those left off or on?
We'll start with the video so we can
Leave them off.
Yeah. So, my name is Dave Morad. I'm the Executive Director at Living Waters Bible Camp in Weston, Maine. This is my wife, Esther. Glad to be here with you all today. We'll go ahead and start off with our video so you can kind of get a little sample of what camp life at Living Waters might look like. So.
I was a prisoner to shame, stuck in my own miry clay. But then you called me by name, gave me new life, now I'm saved. I once was broken and weak, weighed down my chains in defeat. You set this captive on free, lifted me up, now I sing. I'll rise on wings like eagles, I'll walk and I will not faint. I will run and I won't grow weary. You will stay. I was a prisoner to shame, stuck in my own miry clay. But then you called me by name, gave me new life, now I'm saved. When I was dead in my ways, from heaven running you came, picked me right out of that grave. My God is mighty to save. I will rise on wings like eagles, I will walk and I will not faint. I will run and I won't grow weary. You will stray. Wait upon you, Lord, and you are renewed, and you are restored. Now is our wait upon you, Lord, and you are renewed, and you are restored. I will rise on wings like eagles. I will walk and I will not faint. I will run and I won't grow weary. You are my strength. I will rise on wings like eagles. I will walk and I will not faint. I will run and I won't grow weary. You are my strength. I was a prisoner to shame, stuck in my own miry clay. But then you called me by name, gave me new life, now I'm saved.
So that's a little look at life at Camp Living Waters. We're right on East Grand Lake, so we have the ski boat, we have a pontoon boat, we do cruises on the lake, things like that. So a little bit about Living Waters. 2025, next year, will be our 55th year of having camp, so we're excited about that. Esther and I came on board at the end of 20, so this is our 4th year with Living Waters, and I became the executive director 2 years ago, so I'm just finishing up my 2nd year as the executive director at Living Waters. The thumbnail sketch of Esther and I's relationship, or where we've come from. I was born and raised in New Jersey. Esther was born and raised in Pennsylvania. We met each other in Virginia. We got married in Maryland. We raised our kids in Missouri, and now we're empty nesting in Maine. So that's kind of the quick rundown of where we've been. But Living Waters is a great place. We've fallen in love with it. We love everything that we get to do there. And it is a unique camp. We have 3 different aspects of camp that we do there. We have your traditional youth camp. We do 7 weeks of youth camp where kids come, stay with counselors in a cabin, and do your traditional youth camp activities. But we also have family camp. So in the video you saw like RV campers and cottages. Families come all 7 weeks also. That runs right alongside of our youth camp. And if you have an RV or you like the tent camp, we have campsites that you can use. We also have the cottages. We have a 6-room motel. And so we have a lot of families that will come. We have a few families that come and they take up almost a whole camp for a week. And there'll be 3 generations there, grandparents, parents, and kids, all getting to do camp together. So that's a unique thing that we have. And then we also have a wilderness adventure program where we have state licensed guides that'll do wilderness adventure trips. We have a couple of trips that are, we call them brochure trips, where they will take teens out and they'll have a week. They'll canoe the Allagash, or they'll hike Mount Katahdin, or things like that. They stay in tents, cook everything over a fire. Everything they need for the week has to fit in their canoe with them as they go down the river, so it is quite the experience. And then we've also, last year we do a wilderness base camp, and that's kind of the same wilderness experience, but it's based out of our main camp. So the kids stay in stay in our cabins, but they get to do those different types of things. They canoe on the lake, and they get to learn the different skills and things around there. So it's a kind of an introductory level for them. So that's something we introduced last year. We'll be doing it again next year. So be looking for our wilderness base camp. During our traditional youth camp, we have multiple different programs that happen throughout the summer. We have our Pioneer Camp, which is for 7-year-olds to 12-year-olds. Then we have our Super Teen Week, which is for 13 to 17-year-olds. And then this video was taken during one of our sports camps. So we have 2 weeks of sports camp. We have basketball and soccer on both weeks. So if anybody here are basketball players, got a couple basketball players, okay. So we bring in coaches from all over the state to do clinic-style basketball and soccer camp through the week. And they break up into teams. They get to do scrimmages. We have a championship game and then have a championship team. And then the end of the whole week, after parents come to pick up their kids, right after that session, we have an all-star game. And they pick the top kids and they play an all-star game, and the parents are there to see it. The first week is our teen week, and that is 13 to 17-year-olds, and then the second week is our youth, which is 8 to 12-year-olds. So if you know anybody interested in sports and they want to increase their skill levels, we highly encourage you to look into that. There you go. You're interested in sport in that maybe? Okay. Love to have you out there. And then, so one of the unique things with having the family camp and the youth camp all going at the same time, we have a lot of families now, especially after COVID, that want their kids to have the camp experience, but aren't quite sure about letting them go off yet for a week at overnight camp, and what all's going on and who all's there. Well, what we have happen is we'll have families come together, and you have 3 options when you have camp-age kids. Your kids can stay with you and participate in camp activities, and you can do things as a family. Or you can put them into day camp, where they'll be assigned a cabin. In the morning, at the morning Bible hour, they'll go to with their cabin, they'll spend the day with their cabin, and when the cabin gets ready for bed at night, they come back to you and stay with you in your facilities where you're staying. Or you can put them in overnight camp. They could be in a cabin with their counselor and the other kids, and you could be in a motel or cottage, but you'll see each other all throughout the day at meals, and you can go to any of their activities, be involved as much as you'd like to. And we generally do 2 separate sessions. We do a youth service and an adult service. So we bring in different speakers and different music for the 2 different sessions. So if you want, they're staggered. We have some parents that go to both. Some go to the youth service and don't go to the adult service. Some go to the adult service. So we have lots of options for you when it comes to how you want to work camp as a family. So. If that's something that interests you, we'd love to talk to you about that. We are 2 to 2.5 hours north of here, so it is a little bit of a ride, but I think it's well worth it. And so very excited about that. Just some updates about what's been going on at Living Waters. This past summer we had about 500 students go through our summer program. We had 20 recorded salvations during that time, so we're very happy with that. I'm pretty sure there was more than that weren't reported back to the office, but we know that God's working in their lives. Some highlights about camp: we do all of our registration, everything is online, so if you're interested in anything about camp, you can go to our website, and you can register kids, you can register your family, all of that is available online. And then we also offer the gift of camp. We have quite a few people that want to be able to help either a family or a child, or if you wanted to send your grandchild to camp, you can get a hold of camp. We have gift certificates for all kinds of ways of doing that. I know we have one family, they come every year for a week, and the grandparents for Christmas, they buy them the meal package. So they pay for their meal package when they come to camp, so the family doesn't have to worry about that while they're there. So there's different options there. Staffing. We are basically 100% volunteer on our staffing, all of our counselors, all of our support staff. We do give a small love gift for those that are there, but it is basically volunteer, but we've started some promotional things for them. If a student comes and they work the whole summer, which is 8 weeks, a week of training and 7 weeks of camp, they are eligible for one of 3 of our scholarship programs. If they're going into post-secondary, college, or trade school, or something along those lines, they can get a $1,000 scholarship for that education. If they are going to private Christian school, so they're in high school, they work the summer, we will give them a $1,000 scholarship to their private Christian school. Or the last one is if they're going on a missions trip. If they're going to go on a missions trip the next year, they let us know, and we will give a $1,000 scholarship towards their cost of doing a missions trip. So those are some ways that we try to help support our staff that come. And because they're all volunteers, our staff actually starts at 14. So we have 14-year-olds that come for the summer. Generally 14, 15-year-olds are going to be in our support roles, helping in the dining room, helping on grounds, things like that, housekeeping. And then we prefer 18 and up for counselors, but we, depending on the age of the camp, 16 and 17-year-olds can qualify for helping out as counselors. So those are some of the things that are going on there. And then I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with Wendell Calder. He was the founder of Living Waters. He announced this past year that next year will be their last time coming up to Maine for the whole summer. So he always speaks every year for a week during the summer, and then he also is our Labor Day weekend speaker. And next year will be his last year coming up to do that. So if you're familiar with Wendell and you'd like to hear him speak at Living Waters one last time, that will be next year, so be looking into that. We just had our men's retreat this past weekend. It was Friday into Saturday. The men left yesterday afternoon. We had about 30 men there. We had Matt Little from NBBI. Good enough, NBBI, yeah. He was our speaker, and we had a really good time. The weather was great. Good food, good fellowship, and so that was our second annual men's retreat, so we'll have another one next September, so be looking for that. We also do a ladies' retreat in the spring. That's near the end of June. It's the weekend just before our camp kicks off, so that's a Friday into Saturday also. So if that's something that you ladies would be interested in, we'd love to have you come to that. And then our last thing for the season is we call it our Fall Foliage Weekend and Canadian Thanksgiving. I'm not sure what we're supposed to call that. Columbus Day weekend, Indigenous Peoples Weekend, whatever that weekend is coming up in 2 weeks. That's when we have that, and that's our official end of season event. It's a Friday through Monday retreat, and Sunday, because it's Canadians Thanksgiving, we do your traditional Thanksgiving supper Sunday afternoon, and we have a really good time with that and a lot of fun and fellowship. So if that's something that you're interested in, I believe we still have space available for that weekend. And then coming up in November, we do Christmas wreaths. We get handmade, you know the words better than I do, balsam wreaths, and then we put bows on them and cones and things, and the money, the proceeds from that goes to support our scholarship program that our staff can receive. So if your church is interested in ordering wreaths through us, we do have paperwork in the back, and Esther can go over what that looks like. And those monies go towards giving a thank you to our staff that come for the summer. Some other things that are going around camp, we have our infirmary, which is an old house, and it's been used this way for a number of years. But it's time for a renovation, so we've raised funds to renovate that house. We're going to gut most of it and completely redo it. So we're looking for any group that would be interested in either doing some demo work. So if you're good at tearing things up, we've got an opportunity for you. I see some smiles and some nods, and I see parents looking at kids, so I get that. Or if you want to help us as we put it back together in the spring, let us know. We do have housing available through the winter. So if it's something that you have a group or even as an individual you want to help us with, just contact our office and we can set that up, and you can either come up for the day or we can house you for a weekend or anything like that. So we'd love some help with that. Some other things that we do is a couple years ago we got in with Keys for Kids. I don't know if you're familiar with that organization, but they help do devotionals for campers. We have some in the back, so if you're interested in grabbing one, you can. It's similar to the Daily Bread. Comes out in 3-month increments, but they receive their first copy when they're at camp for the summer. It has our logo on it. It has a letter from the camp on it, and a couple pictures from camp, and it has 3 months in there. We try to use that time to teach them how to use it, how to start doing a personal quiet time. And then 3 times through the year, they'll receive an updated one in the mail. And we're finding that the kids really look forward to it. One, because not many kids get something through snail mail anymore. And so to receive something in the mailbox for a kid is exciting. But then it also has very interactive and very relevant Bible times in it for them to be able to do a quiet time every day. So we've started doing that. So if we always let people know, if you want to help us offset the cost of that, it runs about $3,500 to do all of our campers. That is one of the projects that we raise money for. Some other projects going on around camp. We're looking to put some privacy fence up around the girls' dorms. We want to try to upgrade in the tabernacle where the kids do their worship. We want to try to get some monitors, and then we're always upgrading and working in our kitchen. Over the last couple of years, we've introduced a salad bar. So if that is something that you enjoy, we have a salad bar. We've been told it's one of the best in northern Maine, so I don't know. You'll have to come and see for yourself. We have a new coffee nook that's been put in, so we always have plenty of coffee going. I know that's an important part to most of us. And we have a gentleman that has coffee on at 5:30 in the morning during camp. So if you're an early riser and you're looking for a cup of coffee, you can come on down to the dining hall and get a cup of coffee. If you like it black, great, we're good. But we also throw out some of those foo-foo creamers. So if you like to put a little caramel macchiato or French vanilla or something like that in your coffee, we have that available too. So those are some of the things that are going on around camp. Probably the biggest, I get asked a lot, what's the biggest need of camp? And I'm sure we're not the only camp that this is it, but it's staffing. Staffing is always the hardest thing to get taken care of, especially counselors. Back when I was a teenager, counselor was the premier job that everybody wanted at camp. You went to camp and you worked in the kitchen or worked on grounds just to kind of prove yourself so you get the chance to be a counselor. Well, things have changed. And a lot of our older teens, younger 20s, they'd much rather have a position that doesn't require as much responsibility, and they would prefer to be on the support side. So as an industry, we've been trying to figure out how do we continue to get counselors when the next generation doesn't necessarily want to be in those positions. So one of the things we're looking at, and I know you guys work with CEF, and I was looking at their model. They bring in adults to do counselor positions. And so I started thinking, why can't we do the same thing? Now, obviously, we'd prefer to have staff that come and they're there the whole summer, so we have a much better consistency, things like that. But what we're starting to transition to is trying to bring in adults that can give a week of their time and come and be counselors. We have some that come in our support staff. They help in our dining room. They help on housekeeping, things like that. So if you're looking for a missions opportunity, you can come and look and see if we have a week that might work for you. With that though, if you come as a family and you have camp age kids, your kids get to attend camp for free while you're there. If you're a counselor and your kids are going to be attending camp, we'll let you decide whether they're in your cabin or not. Some families, they want to be together, the kids want to be in with mom or dad. Some families, they don't. So we let you guys decide that. But if you come and work at camp for the week, your kids or your grandkids can come to camp for free while you're there. So if that's something that interests you, let me know. I would love to talk to you about that. Some other things that we need is there's always finances. We did very well this year. God has blessed us. We've been doing a lot of projects around camp. We're getting things repainted. We're getting new signage up. In the last 2 years, we replaced our pontoon boat and our ski boat. We've got new furniture on our waterfront, all new bedding in our motels and cottages. We've got heat pumps in our motel and a couple of our cottages, so there is air conditioning or heat this time of year. So that's been great. So God's been doing that. But it's always interesting in trying to with the general budget, trying to make sure the lights stay on, things like that. That's always where it's a little bit tight. But this year, for the first time, we were able to finish our summer in the black. We had all of our bills paid. Traditionally, our Labor Day weekend, we have a big, huge Labor Day weekend, 4-day event, and that's a fundraising weekend to try to catch up from the summer. And this year we were able to we're already caught up. We were able to try to prepare for the rest of the winter. So we actually raised an additional $20,000 to go towards our general budget to finish out the calendar year. And then last year we built a new cottage. It's our Spear Cottage. If you're familiar with Billy Spear, he used to come to camp, and his family helped raise some money, and we have a cottage in his memory. But that cottage was planned and money was raised pre-COVID, and the cottage was built post-COVID. So you know what happened to our budget for building that cottage. So we ended up having to borrow from another account about $28,000 to finish that cottage. And this Labor Day weekend we raised about another $18,000 to put towards that. So God's been providing for us in that way. But if you can just continue to pray for our finances, because we're getting into that season as a camp where we still have light bills and insurance payments through the winter, but after Columbus Day, we don't have revenue coming in. We solely rely on the giving of individuals and churches. So if you could just be in prayer for that, we would appreciate that. But we know that God every year for 55 years has provided, and we're very thankful for that. So just some ways you can help camp. The number one way you can help camp is prayer. We have people all over the country, all over the world that pray for us, that are familiar with us, and we can feel those prayers. God has just done amazing things with the students that are coming. We're a couple years out from COVID. Our numbers are starting to rise again, so kids and families are getting back into that rhythm again, and we're thankful for that. So your prayers are the most coveted thing we could ask for. Another thing you can do to help camp is come to camp. Come be part of it. We'd love to have you there. Come check us out. If you've never been to the property and you happen to be up in Aroostook County, up in the county, just stop by, give us a call. We'd love to show you around and let you see the facilities. And so great way to help support camp is by coming yourself. So we'd love to have you there. We also have different programs. We have a GAP program where individuals will get 2 letters a year, one in the fall, one in the spring, and it's just to stand in the gap financially. We ask for, I just lost the number. I think it's, all we ask for is $25 per letter, so it's $50 a year. And we just give you an update, let you know what that money's going to be used for. So if you're interested in being part of our GAP program, we do have cards in the back to fill out for that. Like most places, we have an Amazon wish list if you wanted to look for things in particular for camp. And then also, if you're interested in a ministry opportunity and want to come and help us out at camp, that would also be very helpful. So, I'm a camp director. I'm not a preacher. And so I get to go to churches and I share about camp. And if I ever get you in a corner and start talking to you about camp, figure a couple of hours before I let you go, because I love camp. But when I come to a church and it's time to share, I always think, okay, Lord, what do you want me to share? What do you want me to present? And for me, not being a preacher, God's always told me, tell my story. Tell Jesus' story in my life, how Jesus has worked in my life. So I give my testimony. And I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up in a camp home. My dad worked at a camp in New Jersey before it was ever opened, helped prepare it to be serving kids in that area. My mother started going to that camp for, they had every Friday night they had a youth event. She went to that camp for those youth events. She got saved at that camp. She got baptized at camp, and she met my father at that camp. So if it wasn't for camping, I wouldn't be here before you today. So camping runs in our family. That camp, there's been 3 generations now of our family that have worked there. My dad worked there, I've worked there, my brother, some cousins, and since then I have a niece that's worked there, and my son's got to work there. So camping is a very important part of our lives. And so being born into a Christian home, I've been in church probably for 9 months before I was born, so I've been in church forever. And growing up, I did grow up in a very conservative, I would say legalistic church. My parents were not as strict and legalistic as the church was. But when it got time, when I was getting into my teenage years and went off to college, I went to Liberty University. That's where I met my wife. I was studying youth ministries. All of a sudden I had the freedom to make choices on my own. Didn't always make the best of those choices. Just because I was at a Christian university didn't mean that there weren't poor choices to be made. And so I attended there for 3 years. I dropped out during my junior year. And when I left, I was very disgruntled with church, religion, whatever label you want to put on that. Never questioned my salvation, but I just wanted nothing to do with church or any of that stuff. I was to a point where I went to some of my professors who were training me to be a youth pastor, and I realize now that my perspective was as a 19 or 20-year-old, and so my memory of how some of those conversations went may not be completely accurate, because I was looking from my perspective and what I was looking for out of that conversation. But I just remember going and asking, I'm having issues, and these are some of the issues I'm dealing with, and how do I make this Christian walk real in my life, dealing with these real-world decisions as a 20-year-old? And I just remember, what I remember is getting told, well, just read your Bible. Well, I understand that, but how does can you point me in the right direction, maybe some verses, or do I just open it and it magically opens to where I'm supposed to be? We'll pray about it. Well, I am, but I feel like my prayers are bouncing off the ceiling. I don't feel like they're going anywhere. How do I? So I just felt like I was getting Christian cliches on my questions. So when I left, I was just very disgruntled with that. Moved home. My parents were gracious enough when I called them. I don't think all parents would be this way. I called them up one day and said, Mom, Dad, I'm done at school, come get me. And they came and got me and didn't ask a question. I remember getting home. We got home probably over the weekend. I had about a week, and then my mom walked in with the classified ads. Anybody know what classifieds are? We used to get these things called newspapers. And it was printed up, and that's how you found jobs. They list jobs. Well, she came in and she handed me the classifieds and said, you're not crashing on the sofa, you're going to be working. So I started looking for a job. But the other thing is if I was living in the house, I still had to go to church. So I still had to go to church. I still went to church. But I was not living for the Lord. He was not part of any of my decision making. I had multiple jobs through that time, and Esther and I had met at school. She finished out her freshman year at Liberty, and then she transferred to Lancaster Bible College. So part of that is the deal she had with her parents was they paid for her freshman year, but then she was going to have to pay 50% of every year after that. And there's quite a cost difference between Liberty and Lancaster Bible College. So she moved there and graduated from Lancaster Bible College. We got married, 2 weeks after she graduated. We got married in January, January 8th, in the middle of a blizzard, snowstorm, ice storm in Maryland. Most of her family wasn't able to attend her wedding, but we did that anyway. And the beginning of our marriage, it was not a Christ-centered marriage. We just lived life. But we both were brought up in Christian homes. We were both brought up going to church. And that was our social life. We didn't go to clubs or any of that kind of stuff. Our social life was always youth group or Bible study or something like that. So because that was what we were used to, even though we weren't living and walking for the Lord, we still went to church. We both grew up in very conservative churches, so we felt comfortable there. Unfortunately, it was a type of church you could walk into if you carried the right Bible and you dressed the right way and you could pray in King James and things like that. You were good. Nobody questioned where you were spiritually. So we could hide there and go to church, do all the things, and then go home on Monday and live life how we wanted to and go back on Sunday. So God wasn't part of our decision making, things like that. And because of where I was at, when we got married, I was working for Coca-Cola as a sales rep. I was always coming home with another great idea of what I was going to do for the rest of my life for a living. One time I was going to join the military, or I was going to become a cop, or who knows. Well, my wife sits me down one day and she says, listen, this is driving me nuts. Pick something. I'll support you, whatever it is, but pick something. Well, growing up, my dad fixed our cars. He was a mechanical engineer. He loved cars. He did all the maintenance and repairs on all our vehicles. That was back when you could do that in your driveway. One of my vivid memories with my dad was when I got the ability, I was old enough to go to the junkyard with him to get a part. And there I am, probably 10 years old, both hands trying to carry the toolbox and go into the junkyard. My next favorite day was when my brother got to go, my little brother, because the new guy had to carry the toolbox. I didn't have to carry it anymore. But with that, I was like, there was a community college near us that had an automotive technician program. It was a co-op with General Motors. So you had to go get accepted into the college, then you had to get accepted into their automotive program, and then you had to get hired by one of their participating dealerships. And you had to keep that job through the 2 years. We would be in class for 8 weeks, and then you'd work in the dealership for 8 weeks, back and forth like that for 2 years. When you graduated, you were basically a master technician for General Motors. So I went that route. I was fortunate enough. I was a little bit older than everybody else. We were married. I had car payment. I had rent due. The dealership I got involved with had 2 shifts in their shop. So I worked an evening shift. So I was able to go to class at 8 in the morning, be in class till 1 o'clock, and then I'd start my shift in Philadelphia at 2 o'clock and go till 10 o'clock. And I did that for 2 years. So I didn't have to stop working when we were in class. I was able to continue doing that. During that time, we got pregnant twice in 2 years. Our kids are 12 months, 2 weeks apart. Not our plan, but God's. And because of that, when Esther got pregnant with our son, she had complications. And so she couldn't lift anything more than 10 pounds, and we had a 1-year-old. And so she couldn't lift our 1-year-old, she couldn't take care of our 1-year-old, and I was finishing up school and working evenings, and we lived right around the corner from my parents, but my brother and his family were living with them. So we were trying to figure out, what do we do? So her parents allowed us to move in with them over in Chester County, Pennsylvania. So we packed up, moved to Pennsylvania, and while we were there, like we always did, we still went to church. So we were like, okay, where are we going to go to church? We didn't want to go where her parents were going. We wanted to be our own family, all of that stuff. So we went to the church she actually had grown up in. And that is the church, and that is the pastor that God used to get a hold of our lives. We started going to that church, and I remember sitting, the pastor lived in this, I don't know, couple 100-year-old farmhouse. It had one of those big kitchens with the big heavy tables and the wood floors. And I remember sitting at that table with him, and he asked me my story. And I shared with him about going to Liberty and those feelings and things like that. And I said, I felt like if I didn't do my Bible study, if I didn't do what was right, God was up there with a ruler waiting to smack my knuckles and reprimand me because I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And he sat me down and we're talking, and he said, try looking at it a different way. He said, look at it this way. Look at it when you do read your Bible, God's up there going, hey, look, my boy read my letter today. Hey, look, my boy prayed and talked to me today. Don't look at it that he's up there waiting for you to mess up to smack you. Look at it, he's waiting to hear from you. He's waiting for you to read his letter. And when that happens, that makes a whole difference in what's going on. And that perspective totally changed how we looked at our relationship with Christ. And through that, I ended up becoming an intern youth pastor at the church. I was a deacon at the church. And I was still working full-time for a GM dealer. But that pull, that call back to full-time ministry was there. I would say I wanted to work on something that lasted longer than 3 years or 36,000 miles. And started thinking about it, and I'm like, well, what lasts forever? And that's us and God's Word. And so we started looking, and we're like, okay, God, where do you want us to go? What do you want us to do? Am I supposed to be a youth pastor? Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? And so we started having some certain friends start praying for us and with us. And this was back in 2002. Internet was kind of still a fledgling thing. We're kind of getting connected. A friend of mine comes to me and he says, I found a boys ranch in Missouri that's looking for a mechanic with youth experience. Well, that's a very weird combination to be looking for, but guess what? I had those qualifications. So we went out to Missouri and visited with Lives Under Construction Boys Ranch. It's out just southwest of Branson. And we ended up packing up our 4- and 5-year-old and moving them halfway across the country to Missouri, where we worked at Lives Under Construction Boys Ranch for 3 years. While we were there, after the 3 years, God had told us it was time for us to move on from this ministry, but didn't necessarily give us the direction of where we were supposed to go next. And that's a very confusing time to be being told where I'm at is not where I'm supposed to be, but not getting any direction of where I'm supposed to be. So we sought counsel, and they were kind of, well, I think you need to stay where you're at. And I said, well, I can't stay where we're at. It's time for us to go. And with that, it was our housing and everything was part of that job. So it wasn't just changing jobs, but we had to find housing. We didn't get paid very much, so we didn't have money for first month's rent or security deposits or anything like that. But back, if you remember, back in 2005, you could buy a house with no money. They didn't care if you had money to buy a house. They were giving houses to everybody. So we were able to find a house, buy a house, no money down. I think we had 3 months before our first payment was due. And so I went back to what I knew. I got a job at a local GM dealer, started working on cars, and we just stayed in Missouri because we didn't know where God wanted us to go. 3 months into that job, I don't know if you're familiar with how mechanics get paid, but we get paid flat rate, which means if you bring your car in and we're doing a brake job, we get paid 2 hours to do those brakes. Whether it takes us an hour or it takes us 3 hours, we get paid 2 hours. Well, with that, if you don't touch a car while you're at work, you don't make any money while you're at work. Well, the way this dealer was set up, I wasn't getting any cars to work on. There were days that I went to work and it cost me money to go to work. Because I'd drive there, I'd eat my lunch, and I'd never even unlock my toolbox. And so we're like, Lord, this isn't working. What do you want us to do? Well, in the meantime, a friend of mine blew the engine in his Jeep. So on the side, I'm helping him switch out the engine in his Jeep. And he was the assistant manager for the dispatch center for Taney County Ambulance, which covers Branson. We started talking. I'm like, what do you need to do to be an ambulance dispatcher? He said, we'll train you. So I left my job as a mechanic and became a 911 dispatcher in Branson, Missouri. They offered to send us to EMT school if we wanted it, so I went and got my EMT license. But the funny thing was, is as a dispatcher, I have my EMT license. They didn't want to let me ride on the trucks and work as an EMT and pick up extra shifts because once you do that, you no longer want to be a dispatcher. You don't want to be stuck in the room. You want to be out on the road doing it. So I'm like, I got this license. What do I do with this license that I can't use? Well, we lived in the next county over, and a friend of mine was on the fire department. He says, we run all the medical calls with the ambulance. Why don't you join the volunteer fire department? So I did. They sent me, I ended up getting my Fire 1 and 2 certifications. I got my hazmat awareness and operations license. Got all these certifications. I ended up becoming the lieutenant of our firehouse. All those kind of things, getting involved in that. But during this time, I get a Facebook message from somebody that I had worked at the camp in New Jersey with back 20 years prior that I hadn't talked to. And all it said was, what are you doing in Missouri? Well, I look up their Facebook, and they're in Missouri. So my response back was, what are you doing in Missouri? Well, they were about 4 hours away in southeast Missouri, 2 hours south of St. Louis, and they were working for a camp that was under construction. It hadn't been open yet, but it was being built. We ended up connecting just to reconnect because we were old friends. I knew I was at their wedding, but they had never met Esther. So we went and met. By the end of that weekend, they asked if I'd be interested in maybe coming and working at that camp. It was a 2-year process, and we got invited to come and work at the camp. It's a large camp. It sits on 5,000 acres, has its own 120-acre lake. They started buying property in early 2000s and didn't have guests till 2016. When we went there, my job was the warehouse manager. I don't know many camps that have warehouse managers, but I was the warehouse manager and purchasing agent there. But the main thing that attracted them was that I was an EMT firefighter. They were looking for someone to come in and help them with their safety services. It was a very rural camp. The fire service was a very small volunteer service. They said there was maybe 2 people that were certified to do any kind of interior searches for that fire department. It was at least a 30-minute response time. And the plan for this camp was to, when they were at full build, to have 3,000 kids on property. So they were trying to figure out, how do we make sure these kids are safe on property? So that's what got me in the door there. When I started there, I worked there for 9 years. When we started, I had told them that I feel called to camping ministry. I'd love to come and do the warehouse and things like that, but when camp gets up and going, I would really like to be part of the camp side of things. Camp got up and going, and that wasn't happening, and it was a great job, don't get me wrong. I only answered to the executive director, who left me alone. I punched the clock, came in, did my job. I got to create a state licensed fire department from nothing, so that was a very neat experience. But we were starting to get that feeling that maybe it was time to be moving on. So my prayer was, Lord, either change my heart and let me be content and happy with what I'm doing. If you want me to be a warehouse manager at a camp for the rest of my life, I'll do that. But I need you to change my heart. I need you to make me okay with that. Only you can do that. Or you need to move me. And so that was the prayer for about 6 months. And also I get this, that still small whisper in the back of your ear. And I hear, if you want me to move you, shouldn't you be looking? I realized that I was just kind of expecting God to just plop a job in my lap. So we are part of Christian Camp and Conference Association. They have classifieds online. We started looking, and Living Waters was one of the camps that was looking for a new executive director. And so it was one of the camps that we applied to. That ended up being almost a 2-year process. We got to go to come to Living Waters in October of 20. So we moved halfway back across the country, started a new job in the middle of COVID. So that was an interesting thing to do. But it was something to see how God had used all of these things to get me to where I am now. When I chose to become an auto mechanic, there was no praying about it. There was no seeking what God's will was in my life. I just did what I wanted to do. But God knew, and He used that to get me back in the ministry, because I was a certified mechanic who had youth experience. We left that boys' ranch, and I ended up getting a job through circumstance, however you want to put it, at an ambulance where I got my EMT license and got certified in firefighting. And I have a camp that's looking for someone that had those skills that could come and work there. I worked as the warehouse manager and purchasing agent at a camp that was being built where I'm buying tractor trailer loads of bunk beds and creating basically a hardware store in a warehouse, so that we ran 3-4 man construction crews. They had 40 full-time employees. Well, now I have the opportunity. I'm at a camp. We have 2 full-time employees and 1 part-time. Esther and I are full-time. We have a bookkeeper who's part-time. But I know how to find the best deal online for different things that you need to get for camp. And I got to build a fire department from scratch. So I learned some very needed leadership qualities and leadership skills. And so I look at how God brought me through these things. Even when I wasn't seeking Him, He was still watching out for me. And that is such a security that you have. I know I was saved through all that time. I know I was still His, even though I was the prodigal son off sleeping with the pigs. But He was still watching out and taking care of me. Now, I do not recommend that route. If you can not go that route, if you can stay in His will and search what He wants you to do, I missed out on so many blessings and so many things that we could have done as a family through those years. I don't recommend that route, but God is still faithful even when we're not. And that is the main thing that I want people to realize when they hear my story, is God is always faithful. Even when we don't realize that He's working and moving and maneuvering, He is. So here we are in northern Maine, getting to run a camp that's been around for 55 years now, and it is amazing. And it's the first time in my life that I have a job that I'm not going, okay, Lord, what is this preparing me for next? Everything I've done up to this point, okay, God, you got me here for a reason. What is this preparing me for? And so it's kind of a weird feeling to not be looking at, okay, God, where's next? But I've been able to channel that and change that to, okay, Lord, what's next for Living Waters? Where are you allowing me to take Living Waters as the new director? And so I'm very excited about that. My plan when I got to Living Waters was I wasn't going to change a thing until after I'd been the director for a year. My first 2 years there, I was under Roger Black, my predecessor, learning the job. And then last year was my first year as director. So my plan was I wasn't going to start making any changes till this year. Well, year 2, I was under Roger. We're getting ready for summer. June gets here, and Roger said, I want you to run camp like you're the director. I'll take a step back. I'll be your security net if you need me, but I want you to kind of take the reins while I'm here to help you. And God said, changes are happening now. And I've been holding on for the ride for the last 3 years, and God has been doing some great things. And so I'm very excited about that. Let me just finish with my life verse, that is Philippians 1:6. Be confident of this very thing, that he who began a good work in you will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. God started a work in my life as a teenager, working at camp, going to college, and then I walked away. But he was faithful. Now, I'm not saying I'm completed in any way, shape, or form at this point. But he's been faithful, and I know he will be faithful till I see him. And I'm very thankful for that. So that's kind of a little bit of where I've come from, what God's doing at Living Waters. And if you would like to, we'll be in the back. We got a table set up with some pictures, and we got some tote bags and pens if you'd like to help yourself too. And if you have any questions or anything, we'd love to talk with you. But do you want me to close in prayer? Or?
Yeah, I'll come up. We'll have a song and